27th August 2024. This is my log for my recent meditation and out-of-body experiences. Yesterday, I arrived to school pretty early in the morning and I went to meditate for about an hour inside the sound studio. And I went to continue with my day and work. And about 2 p.m. or so, I meditated for 1 hour more. Then I went back to my apartment around 6 p.m. Usually my routine is that I go back to the apartment and I meditate for about an hour, then go to sleep. But yesterday I didn't do that. I just went to sleep. And around 11 or 12 or something like that, I woke up and went to bathroom, came back, and then slept again. And around 3, I was dreaming that I could fly, and I was just flying around with some of the people I know, and I'd hold their hands and then would just fly around. We were flying and then we came down on the ground. Then I was walking away from this place where I had landed, and suddenly I became aware that this is not real. I could get out of body if I wanted, but somehow I didn't do that. I continued with this dream. Then I remember changing my sleeping position. I had been sleeping on my back and I changed it and slept on my left side. But somehow the dream still continued. And I found myself just standing at a doorway and I saw my relatives again, my aunts, grandma, and my father's sisters. All of them were there and I greeted them and they went inside a house. And I was still outside and I saw my mom coming in to join the group. And I told my mom, we can fly if you want, we can hold hands and we start to fly. And she agreed. We held our hands and then we were about to fly. And suddenly this changed. We were pulled forward very, very fast. Usually when this happens in a dream, I am pulled backwards. But this time we were being pulled forward at a very rapid speed. And suddenly the dream collapsed and I couldn't see my mom anymore. And this was all inside the dream. So probably when the dream collapsed, all the dream characters collapsed as well. And it felt like it was about 5 or 6 seconds of being pulled forward. This was already a dream conversion and I could state my affirmation if I wanted. So I said, I want to visit the afterlife park. And this word comes from a lot of reading around the Monroe Institute's publications, especially Robert Monroe and what he described as the afterlife park. And I started to hear sounds. Slowly the sounds were increasing and I realized these sounds were lots and lots of children, like in preschool or school, kindergarten, something like that. And they were out in the ground and they were playing. So they were shouting, they were laughing, they were running around, and it was perceived as if they were everywhere, like in a Atmos or ambisonic surround sound system, that they were everywhere and at a distance from where I was. Then I heard a voice. The voice said, to take you to the afterlife park, we must keep you in a calm state. So the sound was very clear, not a feeling of being at a distance, but just at the center of where I was. And it was very clear and thick male voice, a little hoarse, very hypnotic and very calm. Actually, I was feeling a bit cold before I heard this voice because back in my mind I was feeling, since I called for visiting an afterlife park, maybe there is a passage that I have to go through in which I may be subject to feeling like I'm dead or something like that. So there was this coldness going through my body and little shivers here and there, but shocks of shiverings in my body. But as soon as I heard this voice, everything became calm and my body felt warm again. I was obviously surprised to hear this voice and also not seeing where the source of the voice was or who was speaking, and also what is this place and where am I and what are these children sounds. At that time, I started to see some structures forming on my left side at a distance, but I couldn't make sense of what that structure was. There was some light in the distance, but everything else was just dark and I couldn't see anything. And as I heard this voice, I said, who are you? And I waited, and the voice replied, I am Zenith, or something like that. And I thought in my mind, this is a very short answer. And I asked, who are you? Are you my guide? And at that point, he started to speak a very long answer to this, maybe because I thought previously this is a short answer. This time he was really speaking. And the way he spoke was very slowly, as if he is scanning the words that I understand from my being, or what he was saying was being translated very carefully, finding each word or appropriate words inside my being, then being played inside my being or inside my hearing. It sounded similar to what Vincent Field had shared about hearing voice of the shadow people on his podcast episode titled Shadow Beings Revealed. But it was a little different than what he portrays the voice to be. Obviously, there was no reverbs, which Vincent Field has put, maybe for some effect. What I heard, there was no reverb, but the voice was pretty much same. And it was just at the center of my being. Maybe this is another form of telepathy. And soon as he was replying to my question, the children's voice started sounding much louder, as if someone was pushing the fader up and suddenly all the surround sound was overpowering. And his voice sounded like as if being in a distance or very low volume, let's say. Then my thought was, why is the volume of the children so much loud suddenly? And what happened is, when I did that, my focus shifted from listening to him to listening to the sound of the children. And although I was still hearing him, I was not understanding anything of what he was saying. Then I was thinking, this sound of the children is not in my room where I'm sleeping. So it must be from the environment I was in at that moment. So as soon as I thought about the sound being in the room or being in that space, I was brought back to the room. And I was feeling this effect of bringing back or coming back. I felt that, and suddenly I was back in my body. I realized that my body was actually very warm, and I started to record the experience on my phone. And after that, I continued sleeping, but this time I slept on my back again. And soon I could feel that I was getting into hypnagogic images and sounds, and I could feel that my body was entering into focus 10 state. Soon I lost all consciousness and I just slept. But at some point, maybe around 4 or 5, something like that, I was hearing his voice still there, but not totally at a very conscious level. It was just there in the background. Maybe I was dreaming at that point, or in a state where it was almost inside the dream or unconscious state, and I was still perceiving. Maybe my unconscious mind or subconscious mind heard what he was saying, but I couldn't remember anything. So, looking back at this experience, what I feel is that the voices, the appearing of the voices, happens at a state of transition when we are transitioning from awake state consciousness to super relaxed, calm, altered state consciousness. While this breeze or while this border is being crossed, we start to hear these different types of sounds. In the past, I've heard sometimes people walking around and sometimes insects, just sounds of insects everywhere. And about hearing and communicating with the voice, I had a feeling previously that during the hypnagogic state, as we start to hear different voices, we could send question and receive answer. So I've been experimenting with that. Well, as soon as I hear voices, I send questions and I wait for the answer to come back. And this is exactly how it worked when communicating with Zanat this time. And when I communicate, there's almost 3 different types of voices appearing in my experience. The first one is normally occurring thoughts on my mind. The second one is when I want to communicate with someone, whatever thought I have, I transmit. For example, right now I'm transmitting my thought using my voice. Otherwise, there are a lot of thoughts inside which I'm not transmitting. Likewise, there are different thoughts which I can hear. Then, as I'm communicating, I send out the thought. This is now second type of voices. And the third one is not in my control, which appears to me or just appears within me as the thoughts or answers or something is being communicated to me while out of body. So these are the three types of communication I have experienced so far. And there is another type of communication in which there are no thoughts or language being transmitted, but the whole knowing is just given. It happened in my last experience, or the soul retrieval experience, where I was put in a situation and everything that I needed to know was given to me, and I just knew. Or as if the knowing was present there and everyone knew what everyone had to do or who has to do what. So everyone knows. So this type of transferring of the knowing, I believe, is closely related with what Monroe called rote, or transferring of the rote. For example, some non-physical being, a person, gives you a rote of something and you just understand everything by receiving the rote. Probably this is what the transferring of knowing is. So these are the types of communications I have experienced so far. And about the guides and their patience, I feel very much like a very small child that's just running around, and whenever I see something, I'm just attracted to it, or whenever I'm listening something different, or whenever I'm hearing something different, I'm just shifting my focus towards that. And it must be very difficult for a guide to keep up with my changing wishes and changing focus, but they seem to have infinite amount of patience for us humans. With all my experiences so far, whenever I'm out, I'm just like a kid and just attracted with whatever I'm seeing, because this is a new world that I'm experiencing, a new dimension that I'm starting to learn exists and that we can go and experience. And guides are always there. They're trying very hard to give me the experience I want without questioning. Last night, for example, first I asked to take me to the afterlife park, and Zanat was telling me that in order to bring me to the afterlife park, they need to put me in a very calm state. As soon as he said that, I questioned, who are you, my guide? Who are you? So many questions in my mind. And as he was answering that, I was just listening to the sound of the children. Now I start to understand why meditation is important, because the mind is never silent. And even if we have different experiences, if the mind is not silent and not focused, or if we don't have an undivided attention towards something, we don't get 100% of the experience we want, because we're just splitting our mind to many different things. And I remember a song from Baul tradition that I heard a few years ago, and the song said something like, Ek munjai se jete pare, or only undivided mind can pass through the palace of Lord Krishna, or something like that. And it definitely makes sense. In my experience where I was meeting my grandma, I got out of the body. I saw there was some entity there, and he was trying to overpower me. But I didn't care. I just thought I want to meet my grandma and kept all my attention towards it. I think that kind of undivided attention I have to still cultivate. Anyways, with each experience, I have a feeling that we all can learn and find out tiny details, tiny experiences, which gathers up and gives us a picture of what is there beyond our comprehension of what the existence is. And we do that, we learn that in a fun way. And it is indeed a journey, indeed an adventure, because when we are out there, it's not like we are sleeping or dreaming, we are there fully present. All right. So see you after the next experience.